Alright, let's go. Pulling a blade from a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding. That's basic knowledge that any medical research assistant with an ounce of sense ought to know. In other words, there's no good reason why the defendant would have tried to remove the knife from the victim. Let's not forget that the young student did have a motive for killing the victim. The man the victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor. Is what you just said true, Inspector? Could pulling a knife from a wound really cause the wound to bleed heavily? Yeah. Yes. Think of the weapon itself as a stopper in the wound that prevents excess blood loss. Until a doctor is ready to provide proper treatment, that shouldn't be removed. Oh, I see. This is why yokels should stay on the farm. Even a quack from some obscure mountain village would have such basic knowledge. Anyone who's ever given someone a little poke with a knife and pulled it out again knows it. Oh, well, I've never stabbed anyone, you see, or pulled a blade out of a wound either, so... Of course you haven't. I didn't bring you up to behave like a bandit. Father, is it true, what they're telling me? Yes, it's basic remedial knowledge. Remedial. No, it is remedial. Whatever. For medics, Ray would have been aware of it. If she were to claim ignorance of such elementals, that would prove fatal in many ways. But then, why would Ray have done it? Could she have pulled the knife out in full knowledge that it could be fatal? I don't know. Ray never once mentioned anything about the knife to me. It seems almost impossible to believe, but... Could my friend actually have... Susato. Yes? Pull yourself together. We mustn't lose sight of why we're here. Ah. Counsel, it's time for your cross-examination. Oh, yes, Your Excellency. However, I must warn you that if your cross-examination fails to identify any issue with the established facts, I will be moving to my adjudication immediately afterwards. I understand. Believing in your clients and fighting for their cause till the bitter end. I knew it would be hard, but I had no idea it would be this hard. Alright, gamers. Probably gonna have to press on this one a little bit, because nothing stood out as being immediately obvious to me. Now, the knife business is all indisputable, so we should probably start from the motive aspect. Whatever the motive, it isn't in Membami-san's nature to do something so awful. But she had both motive and opportunity. That's very hard to argue against. But you don't know the defendant? This is a terrible argument. And you, counsel, do not appear to know the law. Yes, evidence is the only way to convince the court of your argument, not feelings. With this fledgling to defend her, I would almost say I pity the accused. So do I. Inspector, you will reiterate your point about the motive. Ah, yes. Miss Brett was in many ways the sworn enemy of Membami-san. Uh-huh. That's on that as well. Well, yes, that's true. Dr. Wilson recognized Membami-san's talent and offered to her a position of his assistant, despite her being a woman. She was extremely grateful to him. Yes, the Englishman appears to have been a very broad-minded individual. Dr. Wilson had no time for outdated traditions. He met with opposition, of course, but he believed firmly in Membami-san's abilities. Clearly the defendant was in the man's debt, which only serves to prove my point. Alright, that was not helpful. Hopeless. Withdrawing knife. Another way to... Susato, especially... remember the fundamentals. Fundamentals. Evidence. I think perhaps you're forgetting something, though. You didn't take the evidence at face value. Oh, is there something I'm meant to be examining? I'll do my very best. I know what to do, thank you. Yes, examine. I asked for no tutorial. Thank you. Am I actually allowed to examine things more thoroughly now? Or was it blindingly obvious and I just didn't see it earlier? Tremendous. Open up this bad boy. If we take... Oh, well, okay. I see. That does look slightly more mannish. If we take off the pen's lid... I was really hoping to see, like, blood on that or something, you know? Now let's unscrew the barrel shower. Oh, there's still hope. Oh! This must be the little reserve that holds the ink. Yes, but it's completely empty right now. So, you fill it by drawing ink from the bottle of the nib. Is something wrong, Father? Just that there doesn't appear to be any ink in there. Oh, yes. And it's pretty fucking spotless as well for having ink in it previously. Alright. Great. We got that. So now, we can dispute her actually having written any kind of message. But that's not really any of these, is it? Well, I should examine the other ones just in case. Examine the newspaper, maybe? You never know. Newspaper from Saseki-san. Important article on the back as well. Exclusive. Deadly poison stolen. I see. From Yume's medical research. Father, isn't that your lab? What the? Let me see that. The poison's been stolen? Is this morning's paper? It's this morning's paper. Are you saying you didn't know? As embarrassing as that is for the head of the laboratory, I didn't. I've not heard any such thing. Where on earth could this reporter have gleaned this information? Come to think of it, there was no article mentioning this story in our paper this morning, was there? It's a highly toxic poison we've been working on in the strictest confidence. I'd put Ray in charge of the project. Ray? She was managing it? If what's written here is true, it means she tried to hide the theft from me. And moreover, the details were leaked somehow. Well, this is getting weird. We need to read this article very carefully. I mean, we already read it once, though, didn't we? After that, Alright, well, what about the front? Let's have a gander over here, too. Raucous England returnee tells all. This is the interview with you and Saseki-san, is it, Father? What's up with this crack? It looks as though it was quite an exchange. Yes, he'd become a little over-animated when he was talking about his time in England. The photographer managed to capture the moment his hand karate chopped me in the neck. Oh, that actually made contact. I do hope you weren't hurt. He's taking it in stride. What's up with this fucking crack, though, dog? Hold on, does the other photo have a crack on it? No. Alright. Well, I can't really point out the pen right now, can I? So I guess we're just gonna start pressing again. You say doing it without thinking could be a problem. Does that mean that if you used due care and attention, it would be alright? I wouldn't have thought this much needed spelling out, really, but... The blade is like a stopper in the wound. Remove it and a serious hemorrhage will occur. In other words, a medic would need to be present before any attempt was made to withdraw the blade. Doing it without thinking would be madness. You just can't do it. Oh, well, thank you for such a thorough explanation. You see, Counsel, when you act without thinking, the result is a bloodbath. Ugh. Back to the witness testimony, please. In that case, there's an obvious explanation. Which is... This is going to be really painful, isn't it? I'm going to really hate this next text box, I feel. Clearly, the defendant, Raymond Bami-san, does not possess... I hated it exactly as much as I thought it did. I would. What do you think about that, Professor Mikotoba? I'm not sure that you should be labeling your best friend as lacking in common sense. Well, I thought it would be better than labeling her a murderer. I don't know young people today. If that's friendship, I don't understand it. Careful, Counsel. A lack of common sense can be a very dangerous thing. Oh dear. That's went exactly as I expected it to. Uh-huh. Bonnie-san would have been aware, yes. Nope, back it up. We didn't press on the right one. But the defendant had suddenly encountered somebody she knew was lying on the ground, bleeding to death. The sight could have shocked her delicate sensibilities, causing her to remove the blade inadvertently. I really don't think inadvertent actions can explain this. The woman is a medical research assistant. I can't imagine she would behave so irrationally. Oh. But irrational behavior is a woman's prerogative, isn't it? Alright. Oh dear, you have a lot to learn about women. Only a small-minded man could have such bigoted views. Oh dear, perhaps I'm letting my male persona take hold a little too much. Well, have I managed to convey the basics now? Okay, that was not particularly helpful. I mean, what are we presenting for these two, right? Like, the knife stuff is all pretty indisputable, so what are we gonna go with here? Just... Because, I mean, we got... Oh, poison article's a separate thing now. Following a lecture, you may... I thought it updated the paper. I didn't realize it added another one. On the 11th of August, it comes to light that a very disturbing incident took place. A deadly poison being secretly developed in the university's forensic laboratory was stolen. Even the smallest amount entering the body, either via the mouth or via a wound from a poison-laced blade, would prove fatal in minutes. Current methods cannot detect the newly developed chemical. The university would have to be consulted. Onset of symptoms occurs in minutes, starting with impaired breathing and ending with acute contraction of the pupils prior to death. Such symptoms would be suggestive of this toxin. It's apparently an entirely new synthesis of alkaloids and rumored to have been commissioned by the military. Well, this is not overly helpful currently either. Maybe now that I've examined the articles, pressing will yield something new. Probably not, but I'm just not really sure how to present the evidence that we do have right now. I've got it. There is a reason to have taken the knife out of the wound. If Ray knew there was poison on the blade, she might have taken it out to try and stop the poison from spreading. Right? Yes, no good reason to have put... Alright, here we go. I'm a fucking genius. No, there is one possibility. One very good reason why the defendant might have decided to withdraw the knife from the victim's wound. What? Ha! The yokel not only has a poor grasp of the law, but is also a poor loser. Tell us then, what possibility do you think you've identified? It's here, in this newspaper article. An article about the deadly poison having been stolen from a laboratory at Imperial Yume Uni. The victim perished from a stab wound. Poison has no relevance to this case. But, Prosecutor Ouchie, you will let the defense speak. But a newspaper article? The court cannot rely on this kind of hearsay those wretched publications carry. Counsel for the defense. I am going to need some tangible basis for your claim. You will indicate to the court precisely what part of the newspaper article affirms your assertion. Your Excellency! Yes, of course. Thank you. Ray would have never done something to further endanger Miss Brett's life without cause. The reason why is deadly in tiny quantities. The article reveals the following property about the poison. When the toxin enters the body on a knife laced with the poison, it is rapidly absorbed and causes death in minutes. Are you suggesting? If the knife used to attack Miss Brett was laced with this very poison, it would explain why the defendant, Membami-san, would have withdrawn the blade as soon as possible. Yes, the truth is, it was an attempt to stop the poison from entering the victim's body. What? This is complete and utter nonsense! Not at all. The defendant withdrew the knife blade from the victim's body not to accelerate the woman's demise, but to save her life, and the prosecution cannot deny the possibility. Have you not read the post-mortem report? The cause of death was hemorrhage. The word poison appears nowhere in the document because it got taken out of the body. Well, that's because by acting quickly to remove the blade, the defendant prevented the poison from taking hold. Oh, please, this is clearly desperation, the weasel's last breaking of wind. Poison has nothing whatsoever to do with this case, as I believe the defense is well aware. We have no proof that the information in that wretched newspaper is at all reliable anyway. In that situation, what the student should have done is wait for medical assistance to arrive. But instead, you claim she suspected poison and took the potentially lethal decision to remove the blade. She must have had a strong reason for her suspicion then, or the argument makes no sense. Exactly, well put, Inspector. On what grounds did she do it, yokel? Why did Ray suspect the stolen poison was involved? If you want grounds, I'll give you grounds. I was kind of hoping we wouldn't have to prove this point, really. You can't possibly! From your expression, Counsel, it would appear those are not empty words. But naturally, as you stand in this courtroom as a lawyer, you must be aware that words alone, empty or not, are of no value in our modern justice system. The court demands evidence. Yes, Your Excellency. I've seen it many times from my place at his side in the Old Bailey. In that case, Counsel, you will present the proof to the court now. What evidence demonstrates a clear link between this case and the poison in the newspaper article? How do we prove that? Well, it's probably not the newspaper again, is it? Oh, it could be. Maybe she saw... No, because if she saw symptoms, there would have been poison, and the toxicology would have seen poison. Newspaper? But then we're basically just saying Soseki-san did it, which, like, seems unlikely also, aren't we? Something in the photo? I don't really see anything. Wait. Am I really going to point out this bottle? Like, look, that's the poison bottle. Probably not, but I did glimpse that. Like, oh, what's that? I mean, unless we're going to go... The pen? But why the pen? What about the pen exactly would prove there was a link? We don't know who this belongs to. Unless we're gonna point out, like, ooh, you know, there's an empty vial in here. Maybe they stored the poison in here. Which I do feel like is going to be what we go with at some point, to be honest. But I don't think right now that's the way to go. Post-Mortem Report? Oh, there's 2 pages. Wait. Pupil constriction? Was observed in the victim's both eyes. Hold on. Acute contraction of pupils. Oh! Post-Mortem Report. I would ask the court to refer to the notes section of the post-mortem report, which reads, extreme meiosis, pupil constriction, was observed in the victim. Ah! Clearly, being a yokel with no knowledge of forensic science, I have no idea. So please, do tell me. Presumably, the fact that this condition of the victim was noted in the post-mortem report means that it's an unusual symptom of death. Well, under normal circumstances, the pupils dilate when someone dies. If there was extreme constriction instead, that's most certainly unusual, yes. What are you doing, you yokel detective? In the newspaper article, the following information about the stolen poison. Onset of symptoms occurs in minutes, ending with acute contraction of the pupils prior to death. What? If the defendant, upon seeing the victim stabbed in the back, happened to notice that the pupils of Miss Brett's eyes had constricted severely, yes, as a medical research assistant, she would have suspected poison immediately, without doubt. Prosecutor Ouchie, I think you'll agree, this is very compelling evidence. You yokel student and yokel professor! I believe the defense has expertly demonstrated a credible reason for the defendant's actions. No. Eugene Mikotoba. Yes, Your Excellency. I believe you are best placed here to confirm or deny the veracity of the defense counsel's argument. You will tell the court the truth about the details reported in the newspaper, please. It pains me to have to admit it. But I'm afraid I don't know. You don't know? The toxin was kept under lock and key in my laboratory, certainly, but I was unaware of any theft. Do you mean to tell the court that the reports of this theft are unfounded? No, Your Excellency. Without returning to the laboratory to investigate myself, I couldn't say. Ha! Listen to the bumbling academic. Unaware of the theft of secret state research from his own workplace until he reads of it in the newspaper. I take full responsibility for the incompetence of my supervision. A pitiful situation for a university professor. You should have more control over your students rather than allowing them off on killing sprees. That's totally unfounded. Saseki, you okay, bro? None of this is Professor Mikotoba's fault. It's all my fault. Ray? Membami-san, you stand accused here. Outbursts like this will not be tolerated. But it was me. I was the one who noticed that the poison we were developing had been stolen that day. What? So you knew? I'd been placed in charge of overseeing the project. It was the day that the professor and Soseki-san were interviewed together for the newspaper. That's when I noticed that some of the poison was missing. Just a tiny amount, it was. Why didn't you let me know immediately? I was scared. The whole project was supposed to be confidential, but some of the toxin had somehow been taken. So, I decided I'd try to get it back before anyone found out. Because I had a very good idea who the thief was. The thief? You don't mean... Yes, of course. It was that dainty English woman, Miss Giselle Brett. That's why I decided to join the little group of people going to the seaside. Inside the beach hut, I confronted Miss Brett. But she just sat on a stool at the back of the hut, smiling sweetly at me as if she knew she was untouchable. This is not going to help our case at all. I know it was you who stole the poison. Well now, whatever do you mean? And then, she suddenly got to her feet, before falling to her knees in front of me and then collapsing on the floor. That's when I saw the knife in her back. Hold on. There's a hole. Yo, she got stabbed in the back from outside the hut. I couldn't understand what had just happened. And then, a moment later, I was seized with fear. The pupils of her eyes, they'd shrunk to tiny pinpoints. I don't believe it. In other words, you realize that the victim was suffering from the effects of the stolen poison. My mind started racing. I hadn't seen anything past Miss Brett's lips whilst I'd been with her, which left only one possible way for the poison to have entered her body, on the blade of the knife in her back. And that train of thought was what spurred you to withdraw the blade. Yes, if the amount that had entered her bloodstream was small enough, she might still have a chance. That's what I'd hoped. Really, I'm so sorry for staying silent all this time. Your attempt to hide the truth of what happened is not something that can be overlooked. However, I have duly noted the courage with which you confessed in the end. Thank you, Your Excellency. Well, that went better than expected, actually. I was expecting them to really go for that. It's barely perceptible, but I do think the balance has shifted a little here in this courtroom. Your Excellency, do not be deceived. The victim just collapsed before your eyes. Well, Membami-san, if that is the case, perhaps you could explain how Miss I've already figured this out. Well, you have no answer because the simple truth is that you stabbed the victim motivated by revenge. But you have no conclusive evidence to prove that assertion. Oh, I have evidence, and it is very much conclusive. What's the prosecution counsel up to? It was brief, but he hesitated for a moment there. I'm sure of it. You will produce the aforementioned evidence at once, Prosecutor Ouchie. Perhaps some praise is due, young yokel student. What? I had imagined there would be no need for me to submit this evidence. But you've brought this on yourself. Oh, the crack. Look at that. Could a more damning shot exist? The cruelty in the air on that... I mean, they already said they saw her taking the blade out of them. This evidence, more than any other, reveals the true extent of the accused's murderous nature, for it shows the precise moment that Membami-san had plunged her dagger into the victim's back. No, that's not true. No. I don't believe it. In reality, the guy outside stabbed her and then took a picture from the outside to frame Ray. Order, order. Counsel for the defense, was it you who was responsible for that shrill scream that just pierced my courtroom? Perhaps his voice has yet to break. These yokels are slow of mind and slow to mature. I'll show you who's slow to mature. Careful now. Susato is starting to show her face here. It is often said that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and here we have ample proof. The court will accept this extremely cogent photographic print. I can't believe he has had a photograph like that up his sleeve the entire time. It's such a stark image, I'm genuinely lost for words. Wait a minute, I don't understand. How did you... Who took that photograph? Objection! That is of no importance here. Stop trying to divert attention. Oh. That's an absurd thing to say. It's crucially important. Whoever took this photographic print was a witness to Miss Brett's death. The court must be allowed to hear this person's testimony. Ah! I will uphold the defense's demand. The prosecution will reveal the identity of the person responsible for taking this photograph at once. Well, I'm afraid I can't do that. Pardon? You see, this print arrived at the Imperial Police Bureau headquarters by express post, but there was nothing to indicate... It's okay. I already know how to prove this. The provenance of the print is unknown. Goodness. Are we to understand, then, counsel, that in full knowledge of the fact his photograph has the murkiest of origins, you nevertheless believe it's fit for submission as evidence in the Supreme Court? When you first produced that print before, I noticed that you hesitated for a brief moment. Because you knew that it wasn't completely reliable evidence, didn't you? Silence, you yokel student and babbling professor. What matters is the blatant truth that this print so eloquently expresses. But the defendant has already admitted to pulling the blade from the wound. Clearly this isn't the moment the knife was plunged, but the moment it was withdrawn. Don't waste this court's time with your ramblings. I feel like that is fairly substantial to be... I think it's fairly safe to say that. Or it's fair to say that. Given that what we've already proved, but you know. Without knowledge of who produced this print, we have no means of verifying the claim. And the scene it captures is without doubt the most compelling evidence presented to the court. If the defense is unable to shed any further light on the matter, I believe the conclusion is clear. Oh no. So Sato, this is time for you to fight. If what you've established so far is true, that there can be no doubt. This photograph shows the moment that Ray withdrew the knife. Yes, we just need to prove that. Ha. You'll have plenty of time to rue your defeat on the slow train back to the provinces. And to rue the day you came up against Taketsuchi Ouchi in a court of law. If I can't determine who took this photo, I know how to prove it. There's a clue. Well, counsel. Your Excellency, the burning question, I have the answer. This isn't about whether I can or can't come up with the answer now. I simply have to. The identity of the person who took this photographic print is, I assure you, something the defense can and will reveal. What? No, you can't possibly. But so you boldly claim that you can. Please do enlighten us. Unfortunately, I'm unable to present a name. How utterly underwhelming. However, I am able to present evidence. The defense has a piece of evidence that reveals important details about the photographer's identity. What? Very well then, counsel. Present your proof. Which piece? It's... that. What is that? The newspaper again? Raucous England returnee tells all. It's not the headline that's relevant, Your Excellency. It's the photograph. If you look at it closely, you'll notice that there are some white lines on the right side. Ah, yes, indeed. They had already caught my eye, as it happens. What of it? A shadow of some kind, presumably, from the branches of a tree. What the fuck is wrong with you? Yeah, there's a fucking tree. Right fucking there, isn't there, bro? Right fucking there. There's a tree. Right? In the middle of the fucking office, bro. There are no trees growing inside my laboratory at the university, I can assure you. Now, if you look closely at this photograph... Good gracious! Yes, exactly the same pattern of lines is present on this photograph as well. Well, that tells us nothing. Aha! Yes, it's a shadow of some kind from the branches of a on the fucking beach, bro. And you're calling me desperate? There wouldn't be any trees growing inside a hut at the beach, counsel. What's quite remarkable about it is that the two patterns are absolutely identical. How could such an extraordinary similarity have transpired? Because it's the same it's the same camera. A camera defect, it's cracked. Obviously, it must be due to a problem with the camera used to take the photographs. With the photographic device? Yes, we can confidently say that the camera's lens must be scratched. That the scratched lens causes unwanted lines to appear on every print taken with the device. In short, the two photographs under consideration here were taken with the same camera. But... there must be hundreds of such camera devices here in the capital. It would be utterly impossible to accept that we can clearly identify who fucking did it, can't we? He's been in the courtroom taking pictures of Soseki, I think. I think you're forgetting Professor Ouchie. That one of the photographs featured in a newspaper article. A newspaper? Ah! That's right. The author of that article is the mystery witness to this crime. What? Wah! What? I see why you were called a raucous England returnee. What are you yelling about? You've already testified. It's me no memo, I tell you. Many memo. Many memo. So Seki-san, what was that? Did you say many memo? Ever since I returned to Japan, a reporter from the Shoyu News has been hounding me, following my every move. A reporter by the name of Raiten many memo. Yes, hounding me from dawn till dusk. Ah, now that he mentions it. They secretly spy, snapshots, scribble stories, and scupper my privacy. Could that be the same reporter? A camera to the left of him, a notebook to the right. There I am, stuck in the middle with Raiten many memo. So you're saying that this picture was taken by my many memo? Yes, my lord, your excellency, Esquire. Officer, find this newspaper reporter at once and bring him to my courtroom. We will adjourn for a short recess in the meantime. Oh, yes, your excellency. As you say, your excellency. And one more thing. I want this knife, the murder weapon, examined for traces of poison. You will solicit the substance of the assistance of the Imperial University's medical department for the task. Understand? Many memo. We did it, team. Woo, we're on the way. I'm so sorry, Susato. I should have told you about the toxin. Ray. You have a strong sense of responsibility, I know. That's why you decided to shoulder the burden alone. No, that's not it at all. I was scared of my failure coming to light, that's all, so I'd hoped to retrieve the substance from the Englishwoman before anyone found out. Before the trial started, do you remember what you said, Susato? That you had no doubt in your mind about my innocence? That you'd stand by me to the last? I remember. And yet I didn't deserve your trust in me. Man, like every other defendant says this. I hid important details from you, Susato. I completely betrayed your faith in me. Hit me, Susato. I deserve it. No, in fact, throw me to the floor. That's gay as fuck, dude. No, that's too good for me as well. Drag me through the city streets. I'm no better, you know. I'm literally not a man. Even though in my heart I knew that you'd pulled the knife blade from Miss Brett's back, there was just a brief moment when, in my mind, I doubted you. Susato! I'm sorry. After I stood here and promised you that I'd stand by you and always be by your side, I betrayed your faith in me, too. And as such, I failed you as a lawyer. Oh, no. I think this situation has taught both of you a valuable lesson. Placing your unbridled faith in another is no easy task. Yes, Father, that certainly has struck home. Which is why I can see more clearly now. So, Ray, yes? Can you find it in your heart to forgive me? Oh, Susato. You know you'll always be a gallant, dashing lawyer in my eyes now. Oh, Ray. I was so scared, you know, when it happened. I didn't know what was going on. The Englishwoman was sitting at the back of the hut, listening to what I was saying. I know it was you who stole the poison. Well now, whatever do you mean? And then a moment later, she suddenly got to her feet, before collapsing on the floor in front of me with a knife in her back. And the swan died as well. It all happened right before my eyes. And you were the only people in the hut at the time. That's right, just Miss Brett and myself. There was no one else. So I just don't understand how she could possibly... How are you all so fucking stupid to be on... Like, look, oh, geez. I wonder how on earth any stabbing could have possibly occurred. Boy, who could have done it? And from where? A great mystery indeed. It's the tutorial case, let's be fair. I still can't believe it happened. That's why I just couldn't bring myself to speak up. It will be alright. However it happened and whatever really went on by the sea that day, I promise you I'm going to prove everything you said you saw is true. Spoken like a true Mikatoba. Now, I think we should discuss what's coming up in the trial, don't you? We don't have much time. We must make sure we have our facts in order. Yes, I expect the poison is going to come under close scrutiny in the upcoming proceedings. The police should hopefully have identified it on the blade by now. The trouble is, it's a completely new laboratory-synthesized blend of alkaloids. The police won't have any way, yes, but they're going to test at the university. Yes, without this chemical reagent, it's impossible to detect the poison. Chemical reagent? I sent a colleague of mine off with some earlier to deliver to the police headquarters. I think perhaps you should have some as well, though, just in case. Why, though? Like, if they've given me this, it's going to clearly be evidence, right? It's a very nice bottle. I can't deny. It looks good. It's also very handy clubbing shape if you needed a defense in some way, you know? What's the matter, Sosato? You're suddenly very quiet. It's this newspaper article. Exclusive. Deadly poison stolen from UMA Medical Research Laboratory. I'm wondering how the information got out, given it was a government secret. Well... presumably, the Englishwoman took it, and then she probably told the reporter, and then the reporter killed her, right? It was when the professor and Soseki-san were being interviewed at the laboratory that so-called English lady swanned in, and without any compunction said to Professor Mikatoba, "Oh, Professor, surely your guests would love to hear about your work on that substance there." It put me in a very awkward position, to be frank. But Soseki-san's curiosity had been piqued, so I had little choice but to give him a cursory introduction. So then, Soseki-san knew about the poison. Yes, and it's highly likely that the reporter who was writing up the story about us would have caught a glimpse of the toxin too. This Memo-san. By the way, did that reporter join you when you went to the beach? Oh, no, I don't remember the reporter being there. Indeed, he shouldn't have been. I very much doubt anyone would have wanted him there. Oh, a known criminal had been given permission by the authorities to bathe by the seaside. Soseki-san pointed out that inviting a reporter might be problematic, so the man was sent back to his office. Yet he obviously didn't go back. He secretly followed the party to the beach and took this very candid photograph. And then presumably he posted it, anonymously, to the police. Ah. Yes, that must be what happened. Counsel! We've just heard that the new witness is ready to testify. The trial is to resume. Please proceed into the courtroom at once. It's time to steel ourselves once again, then. Defense attorney Ryutaro Naruhodo. Yes. Ray has put her faith in me now and told me everything, so I can't let her down. I have to prove she's telling us true. I have to prove what really happened that day. I hereby call this order to the court to order, even, as we reconvene to continue the trial of Ray Membani. Prosecutor Ouchie, have you summoned a new witness? Before I address that question, Your Excellency, I have some very important news to share. Oh, what news? And why does he look so happy? During the recess with the collaboration of Mikotoba's... Excellent. I admire your rapid handling. Sorry, I skipped over that by accident, but I'm guessing he just had examined it. The police re-examined the knife, yes. Oh, too kind, Your Excellency, too kind. I was merely carrying out your instructions, of course. I had the Regent delivered to the police headquarters by rickshaw, so it would be there in good time. But judging by the man's swagger, I fear we might need to brace ourselves for the inevitable. So I want to now put the Regent in the pen. I would like to do that literally right now, but it probably won't let me. Seeing as we can't combine items. This dagger, which was so cruelly used to end the life of the victim, has no trace of poison anywhere along its blade. What? Are you sure? I would stake the reputation of the police on it. Armed with the Regent, the test is extremely simple. They couldn't have made a mistake. In short, the accused's feeble excuse earlier has been utterly destroyed. Not really, because the pupils were killed. Like, it doesn't actually matter if the knife has the poison on it, because she saw the pupils constricting, and she knew that poison was taken. She thought Miss Brett had it. So, it doesn't actually matter if she was poisoned. She still could have thought it was poisoned after seeing the pupils. Now, the prosecution is ready to call out the new witness. Ah, the newspaper. I mean, the poison, you know, probably got in there somehow, and I'm guessing it was through the pen. Ah, the newspaper reporter who managed to capture a photograph of the crucial moment. Very well, officer. Bring in the witness. No trace of poison. But if that's really the case... Sorry, I skipped that as well. I gotta stop just clicking. He just dabbed a pencil against his tongue. What the fuck is wrong with you? Witness, please state your name and occupation for the court. Written many memo of the Shoyo News on what people like to call a journo. What's a journo, Father? Do you know? It's simply a contraction of a journalist. I'm there where the news breaks, putting pen to paper, even though I have a pencil. Catch those scoops so they're in print the next morning. They don't call me the hero of the Herald for nothing. The nice guy of news, milady. So, it was you who took this photograph. Well, well, what have we here? I'm sorry. Oh, brace yourselves, people. Many memo senses a scoop in the offing. Female student up to foul play, defended by curiously handsome young lawyer in Supreme Court. The readers will lap this up. We'll set the fold at 72 point in the 5-leg format for the morning edition. Huh? Right then. Let's start with your name. Oh, Ryotaro Naruhodo. Next, what made you want to become a lawyer? Well, I wanted to reform our country's legal system, I suppose. Ryotaro has suddenly become very ambitious, I see. I just borrowed Kazuma-sama's dream for a while. By the way, my name is Taketsuchi Ouchi. That's Taketsuchi Ouchi. The so-called dark horse of the Supreme Court. My objections strike fear into every defense lawyer's heart. Nope, the readers won't buy that. What? Scathing. Witness. Yes. What this court demands to know is whether or not you were responsible for the taking of this picture. It was delivered anonymously to the Imperial Police Bureau only yesterday. Yeah, I wouldn't be a journo if I didn't click quick when presented with a scoop like that now, would I? Sometimes stories just call out to me. Sometimes I have to chase them down, but either way, you've got to be fast. Fast legs to run with and a fast hand to write with. It's no good if you don't note it down, I always say. This is the same as on the pen. It's his pen she died holding. That's what I call my many-memoism. Many-memoism? Ah, yes, I remember your face. We met that day when you were interviewing myself and Soseki-san. Yes, right. That was me. Many-memo again. But you were supposed to be going back to show you news offices after our meeting. But the scoop is, I didn't. Because that Englishwoman's words had piqued my journalistic interest. Miss Brett's words. A criminal left to do as she pleases, just because she happens to be a British citizen? It's horse dung. This country's judiciary is rotten to the core. The Supreme Court's rulings aren't worth the paper they're written on. The police are just imperial pawns. Stay your tongue, young man. Those are complex political issues at play. Well, anyway, I quickly jotted down those words she said in my memo pad. Are you ready to... I'll read it out. It's all right here. Here goes. I should like to go with everyone to see your country's coast. A serious criminal doing some junket. Going on some junket. The people need to know about this. That's why I decided to sneak after them. To get the woman's story so I could hammer her in the press. So you mean to say that you did indeed witness it firsthand? The grim scene portrayed in this photograph? Oh yes, saw it with my very own journo eyes, from start to finish, through the viewfinder of my trusty camera. Thank you, Memo-san. You will now give a formal testimony before the court. You will state exactly what it is that you witnessed of the events surrounding Miss Brett's death. The beach hut was made of shoddy old reed screens, so there were plenty of gaps I could see inside through. The Englishwoman was sitting on a stool when the student girl came in and started arguing with her. Seconds later, the girl pulled out a knife. Throwing the Englishwoman to the floor, she stabbed her in the back. My smoldering journo spirit burst into flames. Quick as a flash, I whipped out my camera, ready to click. I pulled apart the rough weeds of the screen and poked the lens through for the perfect shot. Reed screens, you say? Right! As you can clearly see them in the great shot I snapped. Well, you clearly didn't push it through the reeds if you could still see them. The hut but that's, to be fair, that's pretty nitpicky. The hut walls were just screens made of coarsely woven reeds. Yes, it allows the breeze to pass through and bring some relief from the summer heat. And it was a breeze for me to poke my camera through and see the whole thing hotting up. Ignoring from the time being the appalling invasion of privacy, did you witness everything that happened from the moment the defendant entered the hut? Oh yes, I saw it. I saw the whole thing from start to finish. And you said that you took the photograph through a gap in one of the screens. Luckily for me, they were pretty shoddily woven. I pulled the reeds apart and thrust the lens of my camera through the gaps. Would I get away with it, or would I be seen? It was the gamble of a lifetime. A tenacity of purpose that's considered admirable in a journalist, I suppose. Run on a risk one day, run a scoop the next. That's many-memoism in a nutshell. At last, it would appear we have a genuine witness to this wicked crime. The evidence and testimony are extremely compelling. I believe we may be close to a verdict. Wonderful news, Your Excellency. Wonderful. Nevertheless, it cannot be denied that this testimony begs one large question. What question? Exclusive news, a startling photograph, all the makings of an exceptional story for the reporter. Why, then, was the story never published? Oh, that's right. It seems clear to me that there are some circumstances at play here that are yet to be understood. Ha! More pathetic excuses. Very well then, counsel. Proceed with your cross-examination. There's more to this reporter than meets the eye. He's keeping something about this case very close to his chest. Alright. Is there anything that immediately jumps out as being constricted? There were plenty of... I didn't mean to press, actually. I wanted to look at the evidence, because I wanted to see if there were actually many gaps. Not really. There's kind of only one suspiciously knife-shaped gap. What made you want to see what was happening inside the beach hut in the first place? Call it journo instinct. Can you think of a better reason? Oh, I don't know. Perhaps because as well as being a proven criminal, the person inside was a young woman? Ah, I see where you're going with this. Brace yourselves, people. He's painting the journo as a voyeur. To be fair, you literally are as a job description. It's hardly slander, sir. You had a camera and you were taking pictures without the woman's knowledge. Nope! You've got it all wrong, little student boy. Sorry? To my mind, all that was inside that hut was a scoop. Nothing more, nothing less. Scoops know no gender, man or woman. It's all news. That's not even many memoism. It's basic journalism. If only the courtroom was as indiscriminate. Right, so if that's all buttoned up, can we move on? Tell the court then, witness, what sight befell your eyes? A sight that vindicated my journo instinct, that's what. When I pulled back the reeds, I could see it all clear as day. Englishwoman was sitting on a stool when the student girl came in and started arguing with her. So you actually saw Mimbami-san entering the hut. Yep, and she was raging like my journo spirit. And the argument you mentioned, what was it about? You stole it. I didn't steal it. That kind of thing. Talking about the poison, I suppose. The student girl walked right up to the Englishwoman and started really laying into her. I mean, whew, if she'd laid into her anymore, there would have been eggs. Shut the fuck up. Jesus Christ. The man should have been an author. His descriptive talents are wasted on journalism. But the student's rantings fell on deaf ears, like a Japanese person listening to English for the first time. He really ought to work on his similes first, though. Anyway, point is, that woman in the dock was mighty angry. And her temper finally got the better of her, it seems. Dear me. Which was the climactic moment I caught on film. Seconds later, the girl pulled out a knife, throwing the Englishwoman to the floor. Do you swear before this court that you actually saw the precise moment? Ha! The precise moment. I didn't see just that. I saw the whole hellish scene play out from start to finish. I have here a simple plan of the beach hut. Perhaps you could use it to explain to the court exactly what you witnessed. Please do. This could be amazing. Right you are. It's all here in my memo pad. When I first peered into the hut, I'm sure that the Englishwoman was on this stool at the back of the hut here. Yes, the accused's own testimony confirmed that. She just sat at the back of the hut, smiling sweetly, is what I have noted down. It's my turn to testify now, trying not to interrupt. Oh. Then, the next moment I was watching, the evil student entered the hut. After a while, the pair of them ended up in the middle of the hut, arguing furiously. The Englishwoman went for the student, but the girl dodged out of the way. And in a flash, plunged the knife into her adversary's back as the two passed each other. What you describe is a grim crime indeed. Never sugarcoat the truth. That's what memoism says. By the way, Memo-san, Whilst you were watching that terrible scene unfold before your eyes through the gap in the screen, did it not occur to you to prevent the tragedy rather than capture it on film? Journos have to be observers. We can't get involved. That's our raison d'etre. So you didn't converse with Miss Brett at all? Obviously not. I'm prepared to prove that is wrong right now. I would like to object literally at this moment. An observer always remains on the outside looking in. And that's something to be proud of, is it? Your Excellency, if I may. Yes, Professor. I think the witness's last expertly phrased statement should be added to his testimony. I already know what we're going for here. I will grant the defense's request. Many-Memo-san, you will supplement your formal testimony with the aforementioned statement. Well, nihilism is the foundation of many-memoism, but I'll gladly prove that my words aren't meaningless. I never set foot in the hut nor spoke with the Englishwoman.
Objection!
Many-Memo-san, until now I've had a firm belief that newspapers are in the business of uncovering and publishing the truth. You're spot on there. The press doesn't lie, which is why I am proud to wear the emblem of Show Your News on my arm. Thank you for showing us all moments before we reveal the pen. In a way, that's more many-memoism. Sadly, though, it seems journalists who write for those papers don't always share the same passion for the truth. What are you suggesting with those recriminatory statements, Counsel? Many-Memo-san, do you recognize this fountain pen? Ah! This pen was found at the scene of Miss Brett's death. In fact, the murdered victim was gripping it in her hand as she died. What are you... If you look at the barrel of the pen, you'll notice that its owner's initials are engraved there. R.M. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. It's the initials of the... No. Is it a coincidence, I wonder, that your initials are also RM? No! Writen Many-Memo. RM. That's horse dung. Can't you see? One of the central tenets of Many-Memoism is being a pencil user, which is a bit odd that you keep doing this with it. And yet, as the court will clearly be able to see on your right hand, there is very obviously a blue ink stain. You also don't do that with a fucking pencil. It would appear you must have rather carelessly left it somewhere recently. Your favorite fountain pen, that is. Horsey horse dung! Many-Memo-san, is it not the case that before she died, you met with Giselle Brett in that beach hut? Why should we listen to this absurd nonsense? It's nothing but another excuse. Exactly. Sure, your news will stand behind me all the way. I deny everything. There must be many people with the initials RM as there are stars in the night sky. The defense has neither the time nor the inclination to count every star in the sky. Huh? And there's no need anyway, because the pen has more to tell. There is another clue. A clue that's undeniably proves who its owner really is. In that case, Counsel, the defense will now show the court where this clue lies. Of course, Your Excellency. Lie your smackers on this boy. As well as the initials, there is also an emblem on this fountain pen. An emblem that you will, of course, recognize, Many-Memo-san. Goodness me, it's the emblem of the Shoya News. In other words, the owner of this pen is an employee of the Shoya News, whose initials are R and M. Suddenly, the stars in the night sky don't seem so numerous, do they? Well, Many-Memo-san, how do you respond? No. Dude, what nerdy pants, Jesus Christ. Order, order, explain yourself, witness. Ha! Ha ha. So, this is how the mighty Supreme Court works, is it? Using coercive tactics to have well-meaning citizens reveal harmless secrets. I've used nothing but honest tactics. Alright then, fine. I won't try to hide it anymore. Yes, not long before that grim tragedy unfolded, I, a Shoya News reporter on behalf of the public, conducted an interview with the Englishwoman. An interview? You never mentioned this before. When exactly was this? As I said, it was before that evil little student girl showed her face in the hut. It couldn't have lasted more than 2 or 3 minutes, that's all. It was a brief exchange. But it came to nothing. And as we many memoists say, the people don't pay their dues for unworthy news. However insignificant you deem it to be, this court cannot overlook the meeting between yourself and the victim. You will testify now under oath about the precise nature of this meeting and what transpired. Got it, yes, alright, but on one condition. Condition? In all good conscience, I couldn't speak out alone about this. You need to call back the earlier witness, Soseki Natsume-san. Soseki-san? Oh yes, according to my notes here, that man has a secret of his own. And brace yourselves, because it's not an harmless one. It's big. What? Minimalism states that one man's secret is another man's front page story. Very well, I will grant the witness's request. Officer, summon the earlier witness back. Soseki-san, hiding something? I asked the Englishwoman for an interview, but she declined, so I left the hut without making a fuss. Then, watching secretly from outside, I saw the woman being stabbed and the other witnesses come running. The detective realized that the victim still had a pulse, so he ran off to fetch help. That's when this writer here asked the woman a very significant question. But he didn't say anything about it in his testimony, which is why many memoism demands I reveal it now. So reveal it, please. You mean to say the victim... The victim regained consciousness? And when she did, you decided to ask her a question? That's, true, yes. He did. And that's not all. The woman gave him a very definite answer. An answer that incriminates the accused. This is preposterous. Why am I only hearing about this now? Why didn't you mention this before, you yokel hack? It wasn't even a conversation. Yes, I did pose the withering English rose a question. I don't deny it. But she could no longer speak. She was barely conscious even. Counsel for the defense, I expect a thorough cross-examination. This court must and will know the truth. Absolutely, Your Excellency. Well, we've obviously got to go and press on that last part immediately. What precisely did she say that was incriminating? Soseki-san, are you trying to hide something? Don't look at me like that! Soseki-san, you must tell the court everything that happened. Well, in truth, I'd been catching crabs at the water's edge and building castles in the sand, you see. Well, the seaside is a place to be at leisure, I suppose. Even for a grown man. But then, all of a sudden, from that little beach hut, a young girl's panic-stricken cries for help pierced the air. Right. I ran up the beach to see what was happening, to find the defendant leaning over the collapsed victim. As soon as Inspector Hosonaga saw Miss Brett was on the ground, he sprinted off to get help. And then, just a moment later, I heard a faint moan, a moan from the dead Englishwoman.
I nearly jumped out of my skin.
But what did you ask her, Soseki-san?
I asked her, who did this to you?
Don't protract this any longer. How did the woman respond?
She didn't. She said nothing in response. But
when in the stand, you will answer the questions asked unambiguously. Now, without evasion or reticence, I demand you amend your testimony.
I will. I asked her, who did this to you? But she never replied. She just lifted a trembling finger and pointed in the direction of the defendant.
That is fairly damning, no doubt. Miss Brett pointed a finger at the defendant. Soseki-san, is that true?
It's not easy to stand here and say this, but when we first entered the beach hut, the Englishwoman was sprawled on the floor before us, with the student girl standing on the far side of her. And when I asked, who did this to you?
So she can easily have been pointing outside of the hut, actually.
The Englishwoman summoned her last ounce of strength to point a trembling finger at the back of the hut. Which was, it can't be denied, in the direction of the student girl who stands accused.
And the reporter. No. Soseki-san, why on earth did you neglect to mention this?
But, fiddlesticks, I say.
This is not a British court of law. You will respond in Japanese.
Yes, of course. The Englishwoman did point her finger to the back of the hut, but as I was trembling, and she was trembling, and everything was a blur. And thinking about it, I feel as though perhaps she was pointing in a slightly different direction. Actually, no, not slightly, in a very different direction to where she was standing. To somewhere at the back of the hut, where nobody was standing at all.
You mean that your memory of events and the direction in which the victim was pointing are both unclear?
Yes, that's it, unclear. I'm very, very unclear.
Your Excellency, surely this proves the matter beyond all reasonable doubt. Yes, the woman may barely have been conscious, and yes, perhaps her finger wavered slightly, but there can be no doubt there was an attempt by the victim to confirm the identity of her assailant. Because as the court can see, there was no one other than the accused. This is all fucking wrong! It is now abundantly clear that no one besides the accused could possibly have committed this crime.
No, the reporter could have done it. He was in the same fucking direction by his own admittance.
I am inclined to agree. And in the absence of any credible argument to the contrary, I believe we can conclude this trial. No. Object right fucking now. The headline's writing itself. Dashing lawyers hopes dash 92 point cross the whole page. We'll do an extra edition. This is a serious blow, Sosato. Unless we're able to identify the true culprit and substantiate our claim with evidence, the judge will give his ruling and the trial will be over. But it's not at all. I know exactly how the crime was committed. Impossible though the task may seem, we have no choice. We must think back over everything we've learned. Somewhere in all those details, I'm confident we'll find the clue we need. Ray gave us an account of how events unfolded in the defendant's antechamber. She told us what happened the precise moment. Was sitting at the back of the hut. Moment later, feet stood to her feet. Bam, fucking dead. How could Miss Brett have been stabbed in the back of a beach hut? Somewhere amid all this information we've gathered so far, there's an answer. I take it then the defense has nothing further to add. So, the gallant yokel student's luck finally runs out. I can't say I'm surprised. In that case, I am ready to deliver my verdict. This is a crucial turning point. Where is the real culprit hiding? And how did he? I know how.
Objection!
Your Excellency, I respectfully ask you to postpone your adjudication for the time being. Oh, to what end, counsel? The defense would like to present the court with an alternative theory. An alternative theory that can explain who the victim was actually trying to implicate. An alternative theory? Ha! None exists. There was someone else present at the scene who could have committed this crime. What? And the victim, Miss Brett, tried to reveal who it was to those around her, by mustering all her remaining strength and pointing a trembling finger in the killer's direction. This is fiction, fantasy. Very well. As you seem so sure of yourself, Counsel, I am prepared to hear your alternative theory. So, young Ryotaro Naruhodo. Yes, Your Excellency. You will present your latest theory to the court. At the moment the victim was stabbed, where exactly are you proposing the culprit was? Right fucking there. Naruhodo-san would never give up, and I am a Naruhodo now. The true culprit who fatally stabbed Miss Brett was concealed in this location here. Are you mad, Counsel? You're suggesting the culprit was outside the hut? What? Order, order.
But student lawyer Naruhodo-san Esquire, that makes no sense.
You've just pointed out the exact spot where I was hiding to get my scoop snap. But I didn't see any suspicious individuals loitering, I can swear to that. Obviously, if the culprit had been outside the hut, there's no way that he or she could have stabbed the victim. I hate you all. Actually, Prosecutor Ouchie, there is a way. And, in point of fact, the defense can provide evidence strongly suggesting that is precisely the way Miss Brett was killed. You're bluffing. You're bluffing. The defense's assertion is clearly too fantastical for the court to comprehend. You will need to give us more guidance, Counsel. What piece of evidence corroborates your theory? So, which photo do I present is what I'm going to ask here, because there's this one, obviously. Or do I present this one? Better yet, actually, hold on. Is there anything on the knife? Okay, I just wanted to check if there was like a fucking reed hanging off the knife or something before I did anything else. I'm gonna go with this one first. Excellent. The original photographic print of the crime scene? Yes, it's clearly visible in this print. The trace of the fatal thrust that was delivered from outside the beach hut.
Do you take us for fools? There's no hint of any such thing.
I'm not sure that everyone present would agree. Someone, at least, appears to have noticed what it is that I'm referring to. Counsel, once again, I must call on you to be explicit. Where?
Take that!
Right there. Look closely, just here. In the screen at the back of the hut, you can see the effects of a blade having been forced through the reeds.
No, I can't. I can't see any such thing.
It's true that the hut in question had 4 walls, as you'd expect. However, by parting the reeds, a knife blade could easily penetrate them. This is extraordinary. Yes. The true culprit actually stabbed the victim from outside the beach hut. And of everyone present at the scene, there is only one person who could have done that. Only one person who was directly outside the hut when Miss Brett was killed. Raiten Many Memo-san, it could only have been you. No.
Objection!
This preposterous idea leaves me almost speechless. Just look at the photograph again. The victim lies exactly in the center of the beach. What is wrong with you? Multiple people have said she was on that stool. Are we to assume, as part of this farcical scenario, that the assailant was a knife thrower? No, of course not, you stupid bitch. We're not. If you recall the testimony of the defendant about the events just before the victim's death, and I'm pretty sure Many Memo-san said the same thing about being on the stool. A stool?
Have another look at the photograph. The slit in the reed screen would align perfectly with the back of a person who was sitting on that stool. My word. So, in fact, the victim was killed while sitting on that stool by a stab wound to her back delivered through the reed screen. Ah! Having been attacked, Miss Brett rose to her feet instinctively, but then, unable to speak, she collapsed on the floor in the middle of the hut, before the defendant, Membami-san's appalled eyes. And that, Your Excellency, is the truth of what happened on the beach that day. By your silence, Memo-san. I take it you don't deny the charge?
This is absurd.
That will do. It would appear that we have a tacit admission of guilt from the witness. Accordingly, this court has successfully established the truth of this matter, which means the defendant, Membani-san, is innocent of the crime. Oh, thank goodness. I finally made him cave. He's probably going to object again. I must say, I've never been more proud.
No, this can't be. The Ouchie clan can't. What of my growth? My growth of hope? It wasn't all an apparition. I can't accept this. I won't.
I see no reason for the continuance of this trial. I will therefore... Well, this is all very convenient. This is how the highest court in our mighty empire delivers justice, is it? Suppressing well-meaning citizens' freedom to speak and branding them as criminals? But we've established the victim was stabbed from outside the hut through the reed screen walls. And no one but you was in place at the time to have his hand on the hilt of the blade. It's a perfectly logical deduction. So, your argument hinges on the location of whoever stabbed the Englishwoman, does it? Well, seems a little irrelevant now. Irrelevant. When she was stabbed, how she was stabbed. It doesn't matter. I mean, whether she was stabbed at all makes no difference if you think about it. After all, this trial's already shown the whole thing hinges on something else. What are you talking about? Brace yourselves, little man. Talking about the fact that everything's changed because of the dirt you dug up. What? Enough obscurity. Explain yourself, witness. What's to explain? I'm talking about the poison, of course. The poison? Let's ask the professor for a comment on the situation, shall we? I understand that a deadly poison you were developing was stolen from your laboratory, correct? And it's been shown this poison was administered to the victim, Miss Brett, is that right? No, not really. I think we kind of went back on that. Although that is correct. The unusual constriction of the victim's pupils are a sure sign this particular poison was used. See, so presumably that means the victim already had the poison in her body before she was stabbed. Ah. Given that her pupils were clearly constricted, it seems highly likely, yes. If she had been dead already, the poison could not have circulated in her blood. How refreshing to hear the argument of a metropolitan mind. Wasn't it you who was talking about how there was no poison at all, like 5 minutes ago, Ouchie? It matters not a jot who stabbed whom in whose back with whose blade. Because, quite simply, the Englishwoman's life was taken not by the knife, but by the poison. But that can be explained by the poison being on the blade. Ha ha ha. Forgotten already, have we, yokel? During these very proceedings, the laboratory of the professor at your side assisted in proving that the blade of the weapon used to attack the victim had no trace of poison on it. So let me get this down. The facts, as skillfully established by the defense in this trial, turns out to be a headline-making red herring. Is that about right? I'm upset that we're all just going to accept this massive swing in what we've been talking about, to be honest. So, like, here's my ultimate question. First off, no, he poisoned her beforehand, and he had the poison inside the pen. That's why it's got no ink in it. But before that, or besides that, rather, we still proved he poisoned her. Or not that he stabbed her. Right? He stabbed her. You know? I feel like we've kind of still proven the point. But where does this leave us? How, in that case, did the poison enter the victim's body? There is an undeniably obvious answer to that. The lady most likely imbibed it. You mean she drank it? Have another look at the photograph, as you see. A bottle of carbonated water and a glass had been knocked onto the sandy floor of the beach hut. The poison could have been slipped into either. So somebody made Miss Brett drink it. Well, what do you know? Look at those dashing eyes. This will make a great front-page shot. Hey, why the bewitching stare? After all, I'm the last person you should be looking at. Made no sense. It would make no sense at all that I poisoned the woman, would it? I mean, that's been established already. Established? What are you talking about? Don't tell me you've forgotten. That's a little hard to believe, given the person who established it was you. Me? What on earth does he mean? Oh, let me capture those wide eyes. This is prime press fodder, this is. It would seem this trial is not destined to end yet, after all. I hereby call the witness to give further testimony. That's great, that is. Let me get a shot of that magnificent beard, Your Excellency. You claim it to be impossible you were responsible for administering the poison. You will explain to the... Like... All I'm saying is that we shouldn't even need to argue about this, really. But you know... You will explain to the court in your testimony the basis upon which you make a claim. I'm a journo, and I'm so fucking mad. Because if this was the other way around, Ouchie, would not be like, oh, we need to prove the poison. Look at the fucking no, of course not. I'm a journo and I'm a man. I've never tried to run or hide from anything in my life. And I'm not about to start now, because that's many-memoism. For a brief moment, I thought I'd illuminated the truth, but it slipped back into obscurity again. Just where is this trial going to take us? Oh, yes, I stabbed the Englishwoman, and it's that very fact that proves I'm innocent. Your Honor, as we can see here, it clearly says, cause of death, stab wound. There is no poison on the knife. Poison did not kill her, evidently. Ergo, he just admitted that he killed her because it says cause of death, stabbing. The defense rests. Because why would I have bothered to stab the woman if I'd already poisoned her? When I'd heard the student and that pompous English murderer arguing, it got my goat. If the courts weren't gonna punish Brett for what she did, someone else... Bro! Why do we need to keep going? So, you admit it then, that everything happened as I described. That you are the one who stabbed Miss Brett in the back. You can blame this miserable country of ours. A country that bows to the pressure of foreign powers that lets murderers walk free. What kind of future can a country like that have? That's why I did it, and I did what our pathetic leaders didn't have the guts to do. Slap bang in the middle of that charming lady's back. I plunged the blade. Bro. I would like the defense rest, Your Honor. As someone who spends his life seeing the truth is told, I feel really, really awful about giving false information in my testimony. But as it turns out, there was somebody else who added in for the victim and got her before me. Your Honor. Cause of death, single deep stab wound, resulting in a fatal hemorrhage. That's right, you guessed it. That pretty little student girl. Now there's a woman after my own heart. You're implicating Ray again? She's the one who gave the poison to the Englishwoman and ended her pitiful existence. And suddenly, snap, this journo here is off the hook. What is wrong? If the witness had been menaced. Cause of death! Whatever. Subsequently stabbing the victim in the back would have been entirely nonsensical. And therefore, this reporter had nothing to do with the poisoning. Yes, it's all quite logical. Fatal hemorrhage. Anyway. That's right, it is. Logical and true. I'm glad you've all seen the light. Regardless, you evidently did poison her, or she poisoned herself, maybe. Who fucking knows at this point, but... This is oh no, it's in his fucking pen, though, wasn't it? This is unbelievable. And after I'd made so much progress, is he going to get away with it now? At the very least, he's guilty of attempted murder. Think of Kazuma-sama and Naruhodo-san. They never stopped looking for a way forward. This is so stupid. I hate this. Very well then, counsel. Proceed with what I assume to be your final cross-examination. I hate this. We live in hell. Wait, does this poison actually even work if you drink it? This is not... No, that's symptoms. Via mouth or wound. Okay, so this isn't the same poison as the very first case then, because that needed to enter through a wound. Alright, so... Okay, so I'm just gonna go with this one first. This seems most likely to actually turn into something. So you'll still maintain you didn't give the poison to the victim. Obviously, that'd be like putting a belt on your trousers when you're wearing braces like these. The accused administered the poison, following which the witness stabbed the victim. An unforgivable act, certainly, but not one of murder. Has everyone lost their fucking minds? We're going to consider stabbing someone in the back not an act of murder? Okay. That is how the law works, you see, yokel. We don't consider stabbings to be acts of murder, as it turns out. Only gunshots and poison. Who knows, you may even learn something here today. 2 consecutive attempts on her life in the span of 2 minutes. Quite a day for the victim. Do something that evil. Oh my god. Given the post-mortem says the cause of death is bleeding, you know? Hold on. So why would she have taken the knife out of the back also? Right? Like, so we're now operating under the assumption that Ray poisoned him, and that for some reason makes the stabbing completely okay. Disregarding that nonsense for a moment, if she had poisoned Miss Brett, why would she even be taking the knife out of her fucking back? Evidently, she was just trying to murder her by poisoning her, so why would she then remove the blade? Whatever, anyway. That's not the kind of law this court upholds. You will reiterate why you were compelled to stab the victim, then. Oh, it got my goat. What exactly were they arguing about? About what happened in that restaurant 9 months ago, that's what. That student girl was laying into the Englishwoman for killing her beloved mentor, so now you're completely changing what they were even arguing about. Yes, John H. Wilson, a professor of medicine, invited here from England. Right, but the Englishwoman just jeered. Her case was to be heard by the British consular in Shanghai, however, There is little doubt she would have simply been acquitted and sent back to homeland as a free woman. It was eating that student girl up inside. You could see it. I really felt for her. I can't stand here and listen to this tripe. Ray? Young girl, you stand accused here. You can't just blurt out whatever you feel like. No, you can't. Sorry, but I'm in the middle of some very important testimony here. Just keep quiet and listen. But this awful man is making all of this up. So Sato, please, you have to make them listen. Return to the dock at once, Mimbani-san. We are in the middle of a cross-examination. Your Excellency, please, I implore you. That journalist is clearly not a trustworthy witness. Exactly. He's a filthy, rotten, black-hearted bigot, dirty, great peeping Tom, who has admitted to stabbing a woman. Whoa, take it easy there. Please, I really think the court should hear what the defendant has to say. Your Excellency, I see no need whatsoever to entertain the accused's remarks. I will grant the request of the defense.
But Your Excellency...
Sorry. This is likely to be the final cross-examination of these proceedings. As such, I believe it would be ill-advised to stifle the defendant's obvious concerns. So, whilst recognizing that these contravene regular protocol, I hereby call the defendant to speak.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
It was nothing to do with Dr. Wilson. We were discussing the stolen poison. The stolen poison that killed the victim, you mean? Which, I will remind everyone, is not actually what the Post-Mortem Report says. As we can clearly see, as I have looked multiple times, fatal hemorrhage, but you know. I suspected her of being the one to steal it. I mean, just think about how she killed Dr. Wilson. That's true. Additionally, Miss Brett certainly had knowledge of the new poison. But surely it would be no easy task to steal a secret toxin being developed. Indeed, all visitors to the laboratory are thoroughly searched. Even if a thief managed to avoid being seen by myself or a colleague, getting the poison out would be very difficult.
That's true. I pestered Professor Mikotoba until he agreed to show me the poison when I visited his laboratory. But as I left, I was searched from top to tail.
Miss Brett rather bluntly revealed the existence of the toxin we were developing, and since Seki-san expressed such interest, I felt unable to refuse. Obviously, I gave nothing away, other than the fact it was extremely potent.
I'm very ashamed of myself. It's just that I've had a singular, terrible experience with a deadly poison. I wanted to look my old enemy in the eyes. Surely you can understand.
To find out if my suspicions were true, I confronted Miss Brett about the poison. I told her that even if there were to be an incident involving it somehow, it wouldn't just be the university. The military would be dragged into it, the whole government even. It would be a complete disaster. And how did Miss Brett respond to your concerns? She just curled those beautiful lips of hers, gay, and she said she didn't know the first thing about it. In English, actually. Yes. Many Memo-san, one more small question if you don't mind. I do mind, can't you see I'm busy? Clearly you were outside the beach hut listening in whilst the defendant and Miss Brett were conversing. Presumably then, it was you who wrote this article about what you'd heard. Exclusive. Deadly poison stolen from Yamei Medical Research Laboratory. The story was published in this morning's edition of Shoya News. The details are too accurate to have been written by anyone else. Sorry? Don't know what you're talking about. Yes, look at this. This is the entire article. It is almost what I said to Miss Brett, word for word. Well, Many Memo-san? As a journo, and as a citizen of a free country, I don't have to reveal my sources. That's a founding principle of many memoism. Father's clearly right. That reporter did write that article, but he based it on what he overheard from outside the hut. So this now says, reporter based it on information he gleaned by eavesdropping. So what's So that's what it was all about. You were trying to cover up the fact you were listening in. That's why you came up with that stinking story about me arguing with her.
Shut up! My stories never stink. Look, whatever you say, little girl, it doesn't alter the facts.
Your Excellency, there's something I want to say, and I want it to go on record. Very well, you may amend. He's powering up. The point is, if you poison someone, there'd be no reason to then go and stab the person as well. How are we going to get that one exactly? Let's just press him on it.
Hold it.
Perhaps you doubted the efficacy of the poison and sought to make sure your victim would die. That's horse dung. What? That would be like pouring pepper on your Chinese ramen before you'd even tasted it. Completely reckless.
Shut the fuck up.
Although, it might surprise you to learn that I'm a bit of an impetuous pepper pourer as it would happen. Once the victim had taken the poison, she would have been only minutes from death. And yet the man then proceeded to stab her. There has to have been a good reason for that. If it was the reporter who gave the poison to Miss Brett, then clearly he must have done it prior to Ray entering the hut. Yes, that's undeniable. But between him leaving the hut and the victim being stabbed, there was one very crucial change in the situation. Sorry, what change? The reporter overheard the conversation between Ray and the Englishwoman. Ah, yes, that's it. It is? First found out about the exact nature of the poison he'd used. That could be the key here. Oh! Yes, if that many people were going to get involved, he wouldn't want that to be coming out, would he? On the face of it, it sounds illogical. No, I've got you. I've got it. It's because he didn't want anybody to look too deeply into the poison part. So what do we do to present that? Exactly. Probably the poison article, right? Rumored to have been commissioned by the military. Probably this one, right?
Objection!
Yeah. Well, I can think of one reason. What? But before I explain, I'd like you to confirm something for the court. Did you glean all the information for this newspaper article from what you overheard from outside the hut?
Of course he did. There can be no question of that. After all, when we were in the laboratory together, we were told that it was a terrible toxin.
And there is one more important fact to consider. According to the witness, Membami-san's verbal attack against the victim began as soon as she entered the hut. In other words, it would have been impossible for her to have slipped the poison into Miss Brett's drink. Yeah, I'm also like, that's where we're going with this. Memo-san has been quite clear that he observed every single thing that happened in the beach hut. If the defendant had somehow found an opportunity, this man would have seen it. I suppose that is also true. But though I was honing in more on the there's no reason to then stab someone. Which means that Miss Brett couldn't have imbibed the poison whilst the defendant was present. In fact, it must have been administered to her before Membami-san entered the hut. Yes, very articulately put. When I walked into the hut, I immediately started to press Miss Brett about the poison. At which point, Memo-san overheard some worrying information. Alright, we're going for both parts. Worrying information? What worrying information? The information which he subsequently included in the newspaper article, namely, the poison was being developed in strict secrecy and that it couldn't be readily obtained. Absolutely. In fact, that's quite an understatement. The only possible place it could have come from is my lab. And furthermore, anyone afflicted by the poison would exhibit telltale signs in death. The extreme constriction of the pupils, yes, it's quite stark when you see it. There are other poisons that show similar symptoms, but not among new substances that are undetectable. In other words, it would be clear the victim's life had been ended by the use of this particular poison, which would reduce the number of suspects to only a handful of people. Ah! Everyone in my laboratory is aware of the unique properties of the toxin we've been developing. None of them would be foolish enough to attempt to use it for some nefarious deed. Membami-san being no exception. Therefore, we can conclude that whoever administered this unique poison to the victim was a lay person, unaware of its telltale properties. In other words, someone like you, write in many memo. Gya. It was you who stole the poison from the laboratory that day, and it was you who administered it to the unwitting victim. But you quickly realized that was a terrible mistake, because the poison caused such unusual symptoms and was so traceable. As you listened in from the far side of the beach hut's thin walls, you learnt these facts, but you'd already given the poison to the victim. It was too late, so you hatched a plan to disguise your mistake. A plan that involves stabbing the person in the back through the reed screen. But what good could that possibly do? Isn't it obvious, Counsel? The plan was to kill Miss Brett before the poison could take effect. Once in the blood, the poison causes the onset of pupil constriction. But he had hoped to precipitate the victim's death before that happened, hadn't he? Exactly. Because without revealing any signs of the new secret poison's use, no one would have ever suspected. This is extraordinary. Yes, the effects of the poison meant it would be too easily identified, so the killer had to mask its use, which he had attempted to do by plunging a knife into the middle of the victim's back. Here we go, lads. He's gonna hit us with the "how could I have possibly stolen the poison?" The argument presented is sound. The court is satisfied that it warrants consideration. Does the prosecution have a counter-argument it wishes to put forward?
Well, there are a number of... yes, I counter completely.
Objection!
The prosecution's evasive response clearly shows that in much the same way as he nurtures the remnants of his top knot, he is clinging to lost hope.
Lost hope?
Here it comes.
Ah, you pathetic, useless, fallen samurai. Fallen? Who are you calling fallen? My burgeoning growth is...
I don't need a counter-argument. What? What are you talking about? It should be blatantly obvious. I stole the poison, you say. Gave it to the victim, you say. Stabbed her, you say. Which you also said. Lots of fine theories. But I don't need a counter-argument because you don't have an argument. Where's your evidence? Yes, you make it sound all so plausible, don't you? But without evidence, it means nothing. Whereas I base my facts on object right now. Slam the fucking regent into that fucking pen. Explain yourself. I mean, what the professor said earlier in this trial. It's all here in my many memos. Every word, every slip of the tongue, all noted. That's what the Shoya News is famous for. It's the power of the printed word. How's that then? Blowing the story wide open. See, I, Rennie Raiten Many Memo, a mere reporter from the Shoya News, couldn't possibly have stolen that poison from the professor's laboratory. Oh, but yes, he could. Yes, stop being so dramatic. It's so easy to prove. But there can't be any question of it. He must have stolen the poison. Yes, you're correct. Why do you think the pen is empty? As you've identified, the poison itself is the definitive evidence we need, because whoever stole it from the laboratory that day is the true culprit here. What's your point, you annoying, handsome country bumpkin? My point is this. There is one way that you, Many Memo-san, could have stolen the poison. I've heard enough verbal conjecture now, thank you. What the court must be shown is evidence. What proof?
Take that!
The proof, Your Excellency, is this fountain pen. Oh yeah, we fucking got him. How can that possibly be relevant? These magical pens somehow seem to have enough ink to write many thousands of kanji characters. I believe they arrived in our country for the first time some 15 years ago now. Bah, I swear by a weasel-haired calligraphy brush and nothing else, these newfangled pens are merely a fad.
Well, as a forward-thinking man of words, obviously I love my fountain pen. Suck up a soup can of scrumptious ink, and one's work is awash with words in the blink of an eye.
That's right. The fountain pens have a small reservoir in the barrel, into which ink is sucked up through the nib of the pen in order to write with later. What does all this talk of sucking up ink have? And just as it's possible to suck ink up into the reservoir, it's also possible to eject it through the nib again, of course. My word, can this really be? Well, many memo-san. When you saw the deadly poison before your eyes in the laboratory that day, you used your fountain pen, your very lifeblood, to steal some of it, didn't you? By siphoning the poison up through the nib and into the pen's reservoir.
Objection!
More absurdity. That never happened. True, we've heard that there were procedures in place to prevent thefts like this. But would anyone have thought to look inside a fountain pen of all places? No, I'm a little ashamed to say that for fear of offending our guests, such a detailed search would not have been conducted. Well, this is quite startling, I must say. I would remind the court that this pen was found in the clutches of the victim when she died. In other words, it was dropped at the scene by many memo-san. So, the crucial question is, when exactly was the pen dropped? Are you suggesting... The natural conclusion is that in your haste to act whilst the victim was distracted, you dropped the pen after you emptied the poison into her glass. There could be any number of alternative explanations. For example, the witness could have been using his pen to write down the details of his conversation. And when shocked by one of her outrageous answers, the pen fell from his quivering hand and he just decided to leave it there. No, that can't be. If it was, how do you explain why the pen was devoid of ink? Also, why would he not pick it back up again? What? As you can see for yourself if you examine the evidence, there would appear to be no ink present. What newspaper reporter goes to interview someone with nothing in his pen? No, the pen was dropped after the poison filled its reservoir had been emptied into the victim's glass. Witness, what do you have to say? So this is how our modern justice system works, is it? So what if the ink in my pen runs dry? So what if my pencil snaps? I'm like fucking Wolverine, bro. I can always claw my way back into the game. I have plenty in reserve. Whoa. My mind's going all in. You claim I sucked the poison up into my pen. That's some wild speculation, nothing more. If you thought you could bring down a fine, upstanding citizen with a little trick like that, think again. It looks as though we're going to need to take one final decisive blow. As I see it, the situation is now very simple. It rests upon whether or not this witness did indeed steal the poison. And therefore, it all depends on whether or not the defense can prove that he did. No such evidence could possibly exist. Many memo-san, this is how our modern justice system works. What? In the courtroom, evidence is everything. Something you would do well to remember. Because we are well past the point of speculation at this stage, I assure you. Very well then, I call upon the defense to present the aforementioned evidence. The final piece of the puzzle. Where's that region? Oh, it's over here.
Take that!
Counsel, what is that bottle? This bottle contains the unique chemical reagent that can identify the poison in question. Yes, that poison is an entirely new synthesis of alkaloids developed by my colleagues and I. It would be impossible to detect traces of it by any other method. Or, from another perspective. Simply with this chemical reagent, anybody at all could check for traces of poison. A reagent? What? One drop of the contents of this bottle on the tip of your fountain pen, many memo-san, is all it will take to solve this case beyond any reasonable doubt. No, you can't. I won't. Your crimes are bad enough, but at least know when to admit defeat. Your Excellency, the defense requests permission to carry out the test on the fountain pen. Yeah. This isn't my fault. The Empire drove me, trying to hold its head as a civilized nation. I took up arms in the form of a mighty pen. Justice, righteousness, many memo is many memo, many memo. So Sato, with me, what are we doing? Alright. Did I do it right? That was a Sato takedown, wasn't it? Not quite. That was a Ryutar takedown. Yeah, we fucking got him, I guess, boys. The instant the first drop of the Regent touched the nib of the fountain pen, it was clear to everyone present. When I saw it there in the lab, the poison, the devil got hold of me, and I decided to do it on a whim. I excused myself and emptied all the ink down the sink in the bathroom, washing the reservoir out carefully. And then you waited for an opportunity to suck up some of the poison, didn't you? Into your fountain pen. Yes, that's right. Answer me one thing, Many-Memo-san. Why did you steal it? For what purpose? Isn't it obvious? To find out what it was made of and expose it in an article. I mean, it was a secret project after all, too juicy for a journo like me to pass up.
Then why did the Englishwoman end up dead?
Hello, my son. You have arrived just in time for us to apprehend the criminal. Would you like to give the people at home a loud meow? No? Okay, very well. I went into that hut pretending to quiz her on her situation, that's all, as a reporter. A known killer, enjoying full freedom, evading justice by leaving the country. I told her what I thought about it. And she just laughed in my face.
Oh, what's this? A Far Eastern caveman purporting to practice journalism.
Really? You must learn the difference between reporting and listening at doorways, you ignorant plebeian.
What did you call me?
This country, with its pretensions to a justice system, to a free press, it's really very depressing. You see our superior ways in the West, yet you lack the mental capacity to emulate them. Get out of here, you oaf. Get out and crawl back into the cave you came from. That's when I remembered about the deadly poison I happened to have in my pen. What a terrible tale. In my head, I knew I should just get out of there as quickly as possible, but I couldn't. I couldn't let her get away with what she'd done, when she clearly had no remorse at all. I suppose it was my journo spirit getting all fired up. I'd like to ask you something. Yes. You often talk about justice. But surely as a journalist, you could have used other means to deliver the justice you sought. There's no justice in the press. Sorry. After that trial 9 months ago, I kept digging and digging to find out what happened in that courtroom. And finally, I discovered the truth. It was a cover-up, that's what it was. A cover-up? What do you mean? I would remind you of your position, witness. Be careful of what you say. Oh, come on. Doesn't it strike you as strange? We're suddenly not allowed to convict a foreign national. Consular jurisdiction should never have come into it. And yet that puffed-up Englishwoman was going to sail away into the sunset a free woman. The only possible explanation is that behind the scenes, some deal had gone down between Britain and Japan. What sort of deal? I'd done my research, dug up all the dirt. It was all ready to be published. But you know what happened? The art editor just tore the article up. He came under pressure from the government, you mean? If our government is going to let criminals walk free, if they're going to crush the free press, then what choice do I have but to see that justice is done myself? Let's not forget, Menime, my son. Goodbye, my son. It was nice seeing you for the 10 seconds you were present. Cats, so fickle. That you committed murder yourself, and you tried to lay the blame at the defendant's door. I'm sorry, but you're no better than Giselle Brett. What? The truth is, you have no right to talk about justice at all. You committed the forbidden double murder, after all. I suppose. It would appear we have reached a conclusion in this trial at last. Counsel for the defense, Ryotaro Naruhodo. Oh! Ah, yes. Sorry, Your Excellency. Just musing in a manly way here. It's almost unbelievable that this is your first experience of the Supreme Court. It was an excellent performance. In truth, it very much reminded me of your cousin's exploits. Oh, Naruhodo-sa, Ryunosuke, you mean? The way he handled the trial 9 months ago and the way you handled this one gives me hope that we are genuinely entering a new era of justice in this land. That's very flattering, Your Excellency. Hearing the defense you put forward today made me feel most keenly that the future of our justice system will be forged by you and your contemporaries. Thank you. So, Prosecutor Ouchie, do you have any final thoughts? Bro, don't do it. Prosecutor Ouchie. I, Taketsuchi of the Ouchie clan, have been bested by a callow youth not once, but twice. If there was any shred of my former self left, it has withered and died here today. Dog. Relax. Gosh, your journey to cultural enlightenment sure took a while, didn't it? Silence! Rather than live it, dog. Rather than living on in shame, I will end it all now with this blade. For that is the true path to Ouchieism. Ouchieism? One hopes that the only way in which he'll be modeling himself after the witness. Sprig of my topknot, the time is right for farewell. Hope is lost forever. Taketsuchi. Oh. Rest in peace. A moment of silence. What a stupid fucking video game. Now, in regard to the defendant, Ray Membami-san. Yes, Your Excellency. I have reached my final verdict. I hereby find you not guilty. We did it. We saved the city again. But at what cost? Court is adjourned. It's over. My heart is still pounding in my chest, though. It's all I can do to just stay standing. I didn't notice this little man on his shoulder. Lawyers have such great responsibility, such a great burden to bear. Don't they, Naruhodo-san? Susato. Thank you so much. You were so dashing in there. Ray and Father. Honestly, I'm so touched by everything you've... Oh no, I think I'm going to cry. It wasn't easy, but together we made it. I was on the verge of tears at the end too. Pussy! The only reason I'm still here is because of you. Oh no, I can't take all the credit. It took courage to tell the truth in there. You did wonderfully, Ray. So I would have to say that the congratulations belong to you. Susato, don't be so standoffish. Sorry. We're friends, equals, and the trial's over, so no more of this formal super humility nonsense. It's time to celebrate with swagger, to throw caution to the wind. Caution to the... what? I'm the great defense lawyer, Ryotaro Naruhodo, and I'm taking you out to a milk bar tomorrow. Or something. Look, all I'm saying is that this is all pretty fucking gay, alright? I'll think about it. At any rate, we really knocked the wind out of that horrid man, and it felt so good. Yes, it was satisfying. We practically threw him through the fucking roof. It really was. Isn't there anybody else who we could... Isn't there anybody else we could throw together? I hope you're not looking at me, Ray. Oh my goodness, no, of course not. Of course not. Ah, there it is at last. Ray's lovely smile. Gay. Jesus Christ, you fought for your friend to the very last. As your father, I'm extremely proud of you. Defense Attorney Ryotaro Naruhodo. Thank you, but I couldn't have done it without your help. Anyway, it's time to bid farewell to Ryotaro, I think. I shall miss him in a way, but it's back to Susato Mikotoba now. So, I'll never see him again then? What a terrible shame. My dude. What?
What is happening?
Ah, Soseki-san and Inspector Hosonaga. I do hope you've been keeping well. Is that really you? Yes, I had to change my appearance for, well, obvious reasons I hope, but it's me. Susato Mikotoba.
I don't... So dashing, so divine. No! Doubly dashing, yes, and devilishly divine. Just look at you. I had no idea, Miss Susato-san, Esquire S., that you were the locum student Naruhodo-san, Esquire's cousin. Astonishingly astounding, ace attorney.
He said the word, he said the title. Poor Soseki-san, so confused. I still remember the first time I ever met him. He was in a prison cell in London. What an extraordinary conundrum it was that the unwitting student from Japan had embroiled himself in. But after Naruhodo-san's skillful defense at the Old Bailey, he was free to return to Japan. And now he seems to have earned himself great fame as an author. I am stunned. That's truly an impressive disguise. Even I had no idea. And I am a master of disguise, as you can see. I'm a chief inspector at the police, who came up with Mr. Turtle, no less. Mr. Turtle. I'm not sure you should be admitting to that. Amazing. You're a woman of many faces, I see. Just two, really, and this was a once-in-a-lifetime event, I hope. Not a patch on you, though, Inspector. Well, I am a professional, of course. I do worry about Inspector Hosonaga sometimes, I really do. 9 months ago, when he appeared here at the Supreme Court, he went undercover, disguised as the head waiter of the restaurant. And then, on the steamship to Great Britain, of course, disguised as a sailor. Though that didn't help you, did it, Kazuma-sama? From my perspective, I have to admit that I have mixed feelings about all this. I mean, now the truth has been lost forever.
What do you mean?
I'm talking about the murder that the Englishwoman committed at the end of last year.
Ah, yes, it was an English doctor she killed, as I understand it.
Dr. John H. Wilson, yes, the man I invited to Japan personally. The mystery is, why did she kill him? And now the culprit herself is dead. We will probably never know the answer. We probably will. It's okay. Things usually get pretty weird in the last case. On the voyage to Great Britain, we had a most unexpected encounter with Mr. Herlock Sholmes, the great detective, I mean. Yes, I remember Mr. Sholmes well, of course.
Ah, my arch nemesis. How lightly you utter his name.
Well, according to the stories published about him in the Adventures of Herlock Sholmes, the detective once had a partner who'd helped him solve crimes, a best friend. And that man was an exceptional doctor of medicine, by the name of Dr. John H. Wilson.
What? Dr. Wilson?
I just can't believe that it's a coincidence. I think the English doctor of medicine killed here in Japan 9 months ago must have been a friend and partner of Mr. Sholmes. And if that's really true, then that poor girl won't ever see her father again. As you know, I traveled to Great Britain once myself to study. It was around the time you were born. Yes, grandmother told me about it. On returning to Japan, I took up my professorship at the Imperial Yamei University, but I also serve another role as an advisor to the government on diplomatic affairs. Yes, I was aware of that as well. In that case, I'm sure you understand that there are some confidential matters I cannot divulge to you. Could you just tell me one thing, though? Why did you summon me back to Japan? It's been 2 months now since I returned. When I left England, it was because an urgent telegram had arrived. It said that you'd collapsed with a high fever, and you were growing weaker by the day.
What? Where did that news come from?
That's what I'd like to know, because after a long sea voyage, I found you in fine health, Father. Was there something in Great Britain that you perceived might inconvenience me in some way, or harm me? That's really the only explanation I can think of. Dear me, do you reserve your most cutting glares for your father, Sasato? I'm sorry, my dear, I simply can't.
Ah, let me go!
Many memo-san? So, one throw wasn't enough for you. I've got one last thing to say before they take me away. Professor, me? I know the truth. I know you had a hand in what went on, in that visiting student's fate. Visiting student? Giselle Brett? No, not her, the student of law who left for Great Britain 8 months ago. What? Student of law? You must mean Kazuma-sama? What are you talking about? What does any of this have to do with Kazuma-sama? Nobody in here in Japan knows anything about it. They don't know the guy never made it to England, that he died on the steamship, and that he'll never... Well, I didn't expect to find him in here. What were you officers playing at? Sometimes you've got to deal out justice personally, you know? Terribly sorry, Your Excellency. I was coming to tell you that the rickshaw has arrived, Eugen, and it's a good job I came by. Yes, thank you for dealing with him, and I'll be there shortly. Oh, Your Excellency. Ha 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 ha! The trial's over. I'm not Your Excellency anymore, merely your friend's father, Seishiro Jigoku. And may I say that since I saw you last, you seem to have taken on a more dashing appearance. Sosato. Did you know all along, from the start? A judge sees everything, Sosato. Except for the things that need to be painstakingly pointed out to him, anyway. I couldn't let you take the risk. If Seishiro here hadn't known and then he'd recognized you... So I had a word in his ear beforehand, as an old friend. So, Seishiro, shall we? Yes, having ruled on that case, we now have various diplomatic issues to address. Before you go, Father... Sorry, my dear, we shall have to return to our earlier conversation at a later date. But well done again, both of you. You did admirably.
Oh, thank you very much.
What did you think of my Seishiro sling, eh? It's been a while since I sent a man flying like that. Ha 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 ha. From that angle, his beard looked really weird. Whatever could Father be hiding from me? About Giselle Brett and Dr. Wilson. And now it seems, according to the reporter, about Kazuma-sama. I'm going to have to bring this up with Father sometime, when nobody else is around.
Judicial Assistant, Mr. Mikatoba-san, Esquire S. Could I have a word?
Oh, yes, of course, Soseki-san. What is it?
I think, perhaps, it could be fate that we're meeting again like this now. You see, there's something I need to tell you.
Oh?
I believe that it may be related to the reason why your father summoned you back from England.
Oh, this I have to hear. Please, Soseki-san, tell me at once.
I will. As you know, my time in England was terrible, cursed, I have no doubt. Such awful things I was embroiled in. Thank goodness, locum student Naruto-san Esquire stepped in. After he secured my freedom, I couldn't wait to get on a ship to come back here to my homeland. Having arrived in Japan, I submitted a report about my experiences to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The next thing I knew, I had a visitor. It was your father, Professor Mikatoba. He wanted to ask me all sorts of things about my report.
My father?
He seemed to be especially taken with a particular part of the report. Anyway, he left eventually, having thoroughly quizzed me. But it was the very next day he sent the telegram to you asking you to return.
What was it then, the particular part?
I don't really know exactly. But do you remember them? Those two terrible cases I was caught up in?
Of course, I could never forget.
Yet your father seemed to concern himself mainly with the second case.
The second one? You mean the one Mr. Sholmes forbade any of us to talk about in public? Which is why the only case involving you that any of the member of the public is aware of is the first. What?
Well, I don't care. I don't have to listen to what that dastardly detective says. Anyway, the point is, it seems that case somehow holds the key to all these curious unanswered questions. That horrific, hideous, heinous case. The case of the haunted lodgings.
What the fuck's going on? That case somehow caused my father to summon me urgently back to Japan? I thought that whole business was over, but it seems I was wrong. Perhaps that was only the start. Perhaps the story is not yet told. Things are gonna get fucking weird.
So, the mystery of that English woman's death is solved, thank goodness. And having stood in the Supreme Court now, I think I can comprehend a little better. How you must be feeling as you fight for people's freedom in a foreign land, Naruhodo-san. But actually, I'm writing to you today because of another matter. I met Soseki-san and we talked about that second case he was involved in. Father has said nothing to me, but I feel certain of it. That case holds the key to some great unsolved mystery. My notes on the case should still be in the office, tucked away at the back of the shelves on the left. Perhaps you might like to look over them again. Today, for the first time this year, it feels as though summer has arrived. The sky is a brilliant blue. It makes me long to see you again. Yours, Susato.
Gay. Wait a second. Oh, we did it. All right. This is going to be a weird series of events, I've no doubt. That's fine.